Aleks Jakulin, technology innovator, data science professor, artificial intelligence researcher, and Luka, Renko, founder of sledilnik.org, investor and coach at Silicon Gardens Fund. Together, they are representing the contribution data excellence and experience of the COVID-19 tracker project. Luka, Renko, and Aleks Jakulin, are you here with us? Please say something.
Hello, this is
Hello.
Aleks.
Hello, Aleks. And Luka, Renko, are you here with us? Luka?
Okay, I just got controls. Yes.
Okay, okay. Hello to both of you. If I may ask Mr. Luka Renko, we cannot imagine what it means to be a part of Talking Tomcat team. Can you give us a hint?
Oh, it was a fast ride with a lot of data challenges on the way too.
Great. And now from this hint to your project, so please give us your presentation about this COVID-19 tracker project. Please, the word is yours.
Aleks, can you share the presentation?
1 second.
Just a bit of preview for you. Okay, let's start with COVID-19 Sledilnik project, which is actually a tracking project for COVID-19 in Slovenia. It started out of my personal need to actually get a better understanding about the data about the COVID-19 spread in Slovenia. I was checking official data sources for Slovenia, which were on one side thorough, daily updated data points about the attraction of the virus spread in Slovenia, you know, by region, by municipalities. There were plenty of media reports in the first week. However, you know, I was missing kind of a good overview of the situation because, you know, just daily data points about the state doesn't give you much about the progress of the epidemic in Slovenia. So I started, next slide. I started to collect this data in a small spreadsheet, you know. I just opened the Google Docs for myself to start tracking this daily snapshot of the data. You know, they were publishing it at 2 o'clock every day. I just entered all the stuff in, you know, I collected all the data, tried to understand the kind of factors, the growth numbers, understand the location data where this is spreading, and there were also reports of the sources of the virus spread. Later on, you know, there were plenty of data, particularly from the media, about the individual cases, because, you know, everybody was hot on the topic. We were, let's say, in quotes, lucky to have quite some initial spreaders which were very successful in spreading the disease, which kind of raised the alert level, you know, which was really good of the media, of the public, and so on. So we tracked individual cases. We got, from these individual cases, we got some initial outbreaks localized. You know, there were like 3 large outbreaks going on in 3 different areas, regions in Slovenia. And this was actually how the first week of epidemic looked like for me. You know, I was just tracking my kind of daily numbers and just trying to get a grasp on the development. Then, you know, I kind of spread this, you know, in Twitter discussions. Maybe next slide. I shared this my private Google Docs document to some guy on a Twitter, just to make a point, because they were quoting some wrong numbers, some factors of growth and so on. So I shared it, and, you know, I immediately got struck that, you know, there were plenty of anonymous users coming from Twitter now on this document. I was just seeing them as anonymous users in the tracking of the Google spreadsheets. Quickly, some people like Alex shared this document as a reference and asked others to start contributing to the document, because everybody, there were kind of group of people there that kind of wanted to explore or better understand the development of the epidemic in Slovenia. So this resulted in, you know, some of those anonymous users getting to the faces. So we got faces that were actually contributing individual data points. So like spread in particular local areas, or identifying more information about the individual cases, correcting information or quotes that I were putting into the documents and so on. So this open data that I shared, you know, immediately got a lot of contributions. It was in the first week of publishing, it was at least 25, 30 people actively contributing data points into the document. Just as a comment in the document, I was basically playing an editor on the document, invited some key people already in to help me out and so on. Then next week, kind of things escalated. To the next slide. There were people already bringing new ideas, you know, new big ideas what to do with the data. Because what happened is when epidemic grew up to the level that they were unable to track individual cases, the government decided that they will start testing differently, not everybody with symptoms and so on, but more directed tests, primarily to the people that are hospitalized. We kind of needed new methodology, new data model. So immediately there were people that kind of forked my table, started to work on their improved model. There were people contributing first charts about the data that we were collecting there. And based on that, you know, we kind of understood that, you know, this is becoming something more than just a data source. It's actually a playground for people to develop new ideas, to develop new models, to develop new results out of this data set. Next slide. So, you know, just to see how everything developed in 1 month, you know, so my first public sharing of the document was on March 11th. So the first case in Slovenia was March 4th. So in a week, I shared basically the first data set publicly on Twitter as an answer to some discussion. Then in less than a week, there were already so many contacts I was running through Twitter, through Facebook, through email, contributing ideas through comments in the document that actually I couldn't bear with all these communication flows. So there the idea came to start a community around it. We opened a Slack community. And the first day we got to like 35 people, just the people that were already then communicating, got on board, you know, got a channel where we could communicate and so on. So then the first big result of this improved communication was because of the change of the methodology on tracking, on testing, we decided that we need to focus better on the tracking hospitalized patients, which were not regularly reported by the government. It was not part of their regular reporting. So we said we have to develop our own model. We need to collect this data from the hospitals directly. We have to collect this data from the media. We have to have a back channel to the hospitals that don't publicly expose this data. And this is how our table of the hospitalized patient actually started. Next day, you know, some people joined that, no, this slide, started the website out of it because they wanted to have something better than a Google chart and the Google spreadsheet to describe more about the cooperation, to have a GitHub source code repository and so on. Then we were challenging government, the communication office of the government about some data that was differently reported by the different government services. And out of this, we started a communication with Ms. Bejovic. She's leading the expert group that is consulting the Slovenian government in the fight for the COVID-19 epidemic in Slovenia. So she was really immediately willing to exchange all the data sets that she had. So we got all the structured data that she was getting daily. We started to look into it, clarified where the mismatches in the data set actually came out, why the different reporting was out. And we were immediately asked if we could help them out with presenting hospital capacity for the Ministry of Health, so that they could better plan the hospital capacity to the world. So we presented special view on our website, special charts that were actually helping them to plan the COVID-19 hospitals and so on. And we exchanged also our models that were developed in our community, because we have a modeling group that was working on different approaches, how to model the epidemic. And we shared this information with the expert group at the Ministry of Health, so they could actually envision, how we are seeing the further development. And then on April 6th, we also decided our models are good enough that we could actually publicize them. So this all kind of happened in less than a month, more or less, from the first case. And it built up a community behind it of really data scientists, expert software developers, people that are working on communication and different really engaged people, I would say. That's the really key of the community. Next. So where we are today is, we have an active member community. Currently, this is just the data from our Slack community. We have 78 people weekly active, so contributing at least some posts, some data sets. What we are best known for are our charts, which are constantly developing. So we were introducing new models, so like how to track recovered patient better, because this was not publicly announced by the public sources. So we developed our own model, which are now validating with them. Then we had these hospital charts where we track all the ins and outs for the hospital, so we know how many people are coming in, how many are on the respirators and intensive care unit. We developed our map where we actually can show to every citizen in Slovenia where the new cases are coming from, where the which municipalities are actually now not contagious anymore, at least from the perspective of the confirmed cases. And we are constantly developing different data models. So we now already have like more than 10 different data models for different purposes. And these data models are then used for models, predictions, developing the content for FAQ and learning, and to share with the public through social media and through events like this one. Next one. So just a quick overlook on the architecture of how we work on the data sets. So we still kept our Google Docs sheet as our main data source for the model, because lots of cases we are getting data which are partial, not complete. So we need to combine the sources to get to the complete kind of overlook on the particular data points. For example, hospitalizations, we are using at least 3 data sources to collect everything, to then create a model which is consistent and we can work on. So we import data from the National Institute of Public Health. We get data sources directly from the Ministry of Health. We combine this with public sources like media. We get this into Google Docs sheet model, and we also convert automatically with some scripts some data models directly to comma-separated values, which are then used by modeling team to develop our models or third-party models. We have a REST API for easier access further on. So on REST API, we have our own web page, and we are also hosting embedded pages for some of the third parties, like the University Clinical Center of Ljubljana is using our embedded charts. Slovenian press agency and 24 hours portal. Also, we are a data source for many other portals and many other modeling groups that are working on the data set about the COVID-19. Next one. So the data source, I think it's important is to clarify, is just a base for the real innovation. And I think it's important that data actually provides a better overview on the situation and how we are positioned worldwide. So I will now give my work to Aleks to explain further on how we look at the data excellence in general.
Okay, let me unmute myself and reshare. This is data. You're seeing a map of the world, but how useful is this? You know, if you think about it, just telling you that there are people living in Europe and in North America, it doesn't actually tell you what's the relative risk in every individual country. So on the right, you get a slightly better presentation where you have less overlap, but it still doesn't really tell you anything really actionable, right? So this is data, and you can have very high quality data, but it's not actually useful. So imagine you live in Slovenia, and this is the website that the government's providing around COVID. And maybe it's not that useful, but it points to Sledilnik. And this is what you get in Sledilnik. You get a picture of the cases, of the new cases in Slovenia per district. Okay, and the color is also different. Like, there are a couple of them that are reddish, and there are a couple of them that are white. In the white areas, there have been no cases reported. Doesn't mean they didn't happen, but they just weren't reported. The ones that have had reports are colored in proportion to the percentage of the population, right? So here we're showing something that is letting people know the relative danger they're exposed to right now in terms of active cases around them. Okay, so why is this good? It's good because the data is presented in a way that makes it easy to act upon, right? So that's the methodology that we've been developing and that is featured and applied in Sledilnik. We're calling it the Kuma data loop, and it's inspired by the work of Colonel Boyd that developed something called the OODA loop, which is basically telling you it's not so important what's your quality of data or your quality of analysis or your quality of decision making. What's important is that all of them, the capture, the understanding, the modeling, and the action are tied together in a loop, and that the loop is spinning as fast as possible, that it goes as deep as possible, that it's complete and doesn't have a gap, and that it covers everything that's relevant, right? So if you do all of this together, you get data excellence. So why does speed matter? So if you think about it, when you have a high rate of growth of COVID-19, every day we've got like a 40% increase in numbers. But if you look at how the data is actually being processed, it takes 1 or 2 days for the results to actually become known. But every day increases the maximum number of cases by 40%. What is 40%? Like, imagine you have 1,000 cases. Well, it's going to be 1,400 cases because of 1 day's delay. And if you think about it, the other thing that's important is depth. The most successful nations have offered deep data. They haven't offered aggregate statistics for that particular day. I think we're, especially in Europe, we're obsessing way too much around privacy, which right. I mean, there is a human right about privacy, but there's also human rights about safety and being able to stay alive. So we need to keep these things in proportion. And in circumstances like COVID-19, we need to favor depth and speed more than, say, privacy. So the examples from Taiwan, you know, the ministry that's in charge of the epidemic is actually publishing even things like when did a particular patient become symptomatic? You know, what's their age? What's their gender? Where are they? Where did they come from? Where do they live? In Singapore, they track where did they get infected, so you can see basically what the clusters are, right? So no one in Europe, you know, perhaps except for Iceland, has really offered the type of data depth that would make a difference, let alone data speed. Like the ECDC still collects and reports data on a daily basis, meaning we're going to see a 40% increase in the maximum number of cases, you know, which is not just a few, it's a lot, because it takes time for everything to happen. So in a way, we have this paradigm shift, you know, like even though, you know, in the 1600s, people looked at paper and they published paper, they had this slow cycle, right? So the thing is, we haven't really changed it, you know, with digitalization. Even though we have publications that are digital, there's still like documents that are being sent around on a daily basis. We have data that are basically spreadsheets that are being sent around, uploaded in emails. And we've got models that are basically pieces of code that everyone's keeping on their own computer. I think we need something much faster. And this is what I call the interactive science, where data is actually visible to everyone right away. Where publications are basically websites and dashboards that get updated in real time, and where models are collaborative and everyone's being able to change them, edit them, review them. And you know, this way we get the cycle size of a minute. We can react so much more quickly, meaning we saved you know, the 2 days delay that is now inevitable, meaning that we make the size, the total size of the epidemic, half the size that it would be otherwise, simply by being smart about data. So I mentioned speed and depth, but we also have closure and breadth. And this is the other thing that we did around Sledilnik. We did not just focus on the technical parts of data and, you know, data excellence, but also on the organizational aspects. So to get closure, we need to close the loop. It means we need to collect the data, but we also need to involve folks to be able to understand it. So we internally develop visualizations that help people understand data faster and better. We have engaged modeling experts that work on properly filtering out the irrelevant you know, factors. Like there is this funny post about Swedes being so considerate that they don't even die on the weekends. Well, you know, on the weekends, the data is moving more slowly. That's what's causing, you know, those oscillations. You know, the delay I spoke about, 2 days, like it's 2 days on a weekday, and on a weekend, it might be 4 days. So, the next step is actually decision makers, and we've engaged decision makers so that they can actually use our work as fast as it happens, so they don't have to wait another day before a report is prepared and published. And yes, it does potentially increase the odds of errors, but this is why we keep that loop going. And if it's a fast loop, errors also get addressed very quickly. The second aspect of building excellence is the breadth. So, you know, for example, today we've been debating the new serological analysis of you know, Slovenia, and that requires skills that we previously didn't really have that much inside the team. So we brought in you know, microbiologists and other folks that do testing, and they understand the whole testing process and the ELISA protocols and similar, right? So we need to close the loop so that the loop turns as fast as possible. And we need to also increase the breadth to bring all the relevant experts with relevant data and the relevant understanding that's needed to have good decisions and good actions. And the final aspect is that we need quality in everything. So this was an invite-based process. So we invited the people that we respected, who had the best work we knew, and many of them responded and engaged. That's in part what is the basis for the relative success and relevance of Sledilnik. So to summarize data excellence as a process is that we have this data loop, meaning that we work with a data technical group and a data meaning group of sorts. We try to spin the circle as fast as we can, both in terms of the technical process of moving from data to understanding to modeling and to decisions, but also by bringing all the relevant experts into a community that works collaboratively. And the mission that is emerging from all of this is that we're developing and recognizing excellence in collection, distribution, and application of data to benefit life. This way, by building data excellence, we solve many of the problems that had been raised by previous speakers around, yes, we have data, but are people actually using it? That's the key part. We need the data excellence process to properly create loops in different domains, in different applications for governments, for communities, for companies, to properly utilize data to build proper data-driven institutions. So the Sledilnik team is developing and supporting data infrastructure, and we're becoming good at actually getting organized as a community to create something like that whenever there is a need, whenever there is an important challenge to be tackled. So here I'm going to conclude the presentation and invite you for questions.
Thank you very much, Luka, Renko, and Aleks Jakulin. And I think we have some questions on our chat, but I think that already one answer came, because one of our listeners asked for the, Mrs. Ubaldi asked for the Slack channel link, and I think that we already have this answer. And one of our listeners asked for your copy of PowerPoint presentations. I think this will also be arranged afterwards. So there are no further questions for now. Maybe just to check Q&A. There is one question. Just let me read it. Looking at the spreadsheet about data disclosure between different countries, it looks that we are at dark, talking UK as example, comparing to the others. How do you evaluate the politics system influence over that difference? Maybe you can give us a short answer on this one, please.
I cannot really speak that much about what's happening in the UK. The thing that makes the biggest difference is when you bring everyone together. When you connect the community, when you close the loop. And if you don't close the loop, if you're relying on expert groups that don't include all the relevant stakeholders, you're going to get worse results. The good thing about potential, small country like Slovenia is that it's very easy to get all the key people in a room because it's a small country. In a bigger country, it's much harder to synchronize. So I wouldn't just, point fingers. Small countries have certain advantages. Most of the successful cases of COVID-19 response have been in small countries, like Taiwan, like South Korea, like New Zealand, Iceland. So in a bigger country, you need a little more skill and excellence to be able to close the loop in a bigger society.
Thank you very much. We have one more question, so stay with us. It's a question on our chat channel. So from Arturo Rivera, OECD, and the question goes, in relation to your concluding points for the way forward, how would you relate those to government's digital preparedness from a data governance perspective?
So I would say that data governance is great, but for real excellence, you need to be able to create and close loops. Create and close data loops. So whenever there is a challenge, whenever there is a problem you want as a government to address, you need to actually build the loop. You cannot just capture the data. That's not enough. You need to do the whole circle. So that's our proposal, is whenever you want actually the data to be properly applied, you also need to build a loop around it. And that loop is actually going to evaluate the quality of data, is going to create the value that's needed for sustainable long-term data capture, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say that we will arrange afterwards with all your PowerPoint presentations, so that I think that we will get everything after this conference. Thank you for this answer. Your presentation was very interesting. We are getting comments on our chat channel. So thank you very much for now. Just let me shortly check Q&A channel. Okay, no, there are no further questions. So thank you very much, Aleks, and thank you very much, Luka.
Thank you.